Thank you, Erica. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I did mention that this is back to school time, and we're going back to God as we start a new sermon series called Praying Together. What I did not mention is that the women's lunch this time is also back to school. So they're going to bring brown bag lunches. Or if you're really cool in the cool crowd, maybe you have that Wonder Woman lunch pail laying around. Yeah. I had a Superman one when I was going. Do they even do that anymore? Is that a thing? Probably not. But if you know, you know. If you have a Wonder Woman lunch pail, extra points for you, free dessert for you. But bring your own brown bag lunch to that women's table talk next week. As we get started with this sermon series, recognize this is going through the whole campus. We are praying simultaneous prayers. We are doing simultaneous sermon series. The whole campaign between now and Christmas is basically going to be a campus-wide event. So everybody on this campus, everybody within earshot and eye shot can be a part of this, no matter where you are. As we talk about this idea of praying together, it's very important because that's the one way that we know how we can relate to God best. Think about someone who has been a mentor in your life, someone who has had the most influence in your life, and ask this question: did you talk to them? I bet you did. And I bet you did it more than once. I bet if they were truly influential in forming who you were, you probably had conversations with them. Not just one, not just, hey, I met this guy, or gal, got their autograph, and my life was forever changed. That's possible, I guess. But really look at the influential people in your lives and ask, was that a conversation? I bet it was. You know what we call that in Christianese? Prayer. There you go. It's as simple as that. A conversation that shapes you, that if you allow it to shape you. So today we're starting off this series with a title called Hungry for God. We're going to talk about Matthew chapter 6. Now, this is a little bit interesting because Matthew chapter 6 has three main movements that Jesus is talking about. He's talking about when you do acts of righteousness, when you pray, and when you fast. The commonality in that whole chapter is when you do this, don't do it for show. It's not about what's going on the outside. It's about what's going on the inside. And so when you think about acts of righteousness, when you think about prayer and you think about fasting, you think, well, Bill will probably open up with prayer because it's a prayer series. Actually, no. I'm going to open up with fasting. Now, why is that? Why would you do the last one first? How many people, this isn't meant to embarrass you, I'm just genuinely curious, how many people have actually ever done a biblical fast? That's what I thought. See, we're going to start with this because it's going to take a minute to get our heads around it. To do it, it's not just I'm going to stop eating my Twinkie for a day. It's a little bit more involved than that. So we're going to teach you how to do that. We're going to teach you how to listen for God in that. And so I'm going to take a couple of weeks to kind of introduce this idea of fasting so that we have time to get our heads around it. So I mentioned before that it is really more about the outside than the inside. And I want to see if you can relate to this picture. What's she doing?
Working late.
She's working late. She might be on a video call. Do you notice anything about her that seems odd if she were to be in an office? How many people have done this? Me too, man. If you're on one of those church calls, please don't ask me to stand up. She is from the top, all professional, all put together. Everything is prim and pristine. It looks just like it should if you were sitting in the office. But when you look at that bottom half, man, look at the laundry, look at the giant slippers, look at the sweatpants. Doesn't that feel comfortable? That's where we want to be. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. So it's about what's on the outside that is so important in our society today. It's how it appears. And that's what Jesus is exactly going to caution us about in just a second. We tend to go with the reality-based comfort zone. And you know, one of the things that I found that's fascinating to me with ever since COVID came along and we all had to figure out how to work from home, and some people are still working from home at least some of the days of the week. How do I say this? Marital relations have become strained because your spouse now sees who you are at work when you're trying to impress people. And then they see the real you at the same time. So it's like they can't get their heads around this. Like, how come you're so nice to them and not nice to me? If you've ever been in the middle of a huge argument and like the phone rings or the doorbell rings, like, I told you, ding dong, hey, how you doing? Anybody been there? You know exactly what I'm talking about. So there's the appearance And there's a reality. And Jesus is cautioning us about, hey, don't just look at the appearance, look at the reality. That's where real growth and transformation is going to happen. And so the thing that we're talking about today specifically, because we're kicking off this idea of growing together, it's not just a physical growing. Like, yeah, we would love to have more people. We would love to have more space, but we would love to have more God. That's the bottom line. We want this relationship to flow, to blossom, to produce fruit. That's what it's really all about. Now, a while back, if you have been here for any length of time, you know that we showed you some architectural renderings. And this was one of them, what it might look like if we were to ever expand our facilities. And we've had a lot of questions like, hey, you showed us all these artist renderings, and then they kind of disappear. What's going on? Well, here's the thing, and this is me talking straight for just a second. This isn't Pastor Bill, this is just Bill. If I want to do something to expand our facilities, if you're going to ask me to contribute to this through my time, talent, and my treasure, then I want to make sure that it's of God. I want to make sure it's not just we want to look good, we want to look pretty. I want to know that it's going to make an impact. I want to know that the last 182 years that the church has been here will be just equally and maybe even more powerful in the next 182 years. That's the length of span that I'm looking at. And so I have a few questions. What would we do? How would we do it? How would we know that God's guiding this? What's God saying? Well, if we don't take time to pray, to fast, to share the vision, we'll never know. So typically, if you're talking about a building campaign, because that's the cursed phrase in church language, a building campaign, he's going to ask for money. No, actually, I'm not. What I am going to ask is that we pray. What I am going to ask is that we go to God's economy courses and learn how to be a good steward. What I am going to ask is that we yield ourselves to God and become generous givers. A tender heart, a heart for the community around us. If that results in giving to a campaign, great. And if that results in giving to time and talent and treasure, great. But if God for some reason said, no, don't do anything, I would be foolish to press ahead. I have a feeling he's not going to say that. I mean, as we have honestly looked at this as the church leadership, we've looked at the community around us, we've looked at the opportunities that we have, we think it's time that we grow. And I don't just mean in numbers. This is interesting because we're right here at the start of school where numbers are down because people are traveling. But you've seen the construction. Greater things are coming. You're going to see a lot more construction. We're going to be the southern end of an anchor of this amazing city center with this opportunity planted 182 years ago to be here in this fastest growing community at the heart of the city center, the southern anchor of that. Now, the other question that I would have, if you're asking me in full disclosure, okay, let's decide that we need to expand our space a little bit. My favorite question in the world, anybody know my favorite question? To what end? Yes, that's my wife, of course. I had a plant in the audience. Yeah. To what end? Are we building a bigger venue so that we can have a great concert night that we have on Sunday and forget about it by Monday? Are we building a bigger event space so that we can hang out together and play bingo? That's not bad, by the way, but I hope that if we do build, and I think we will, I hope that we're building a place that we launch from, a place that we train disciples, a place where disciples are made and sent, organized, trained, and equipped. I pray that this becomes a place that as people come through, they become transformed, just like I hope we are in these next 40 days. I pray that we don't just make a pretty building. I pray that we make a useful building if that's what God says. And personally, I'm not going to influence you. I'm not going to tell you what God's telling me. Because if I do that and then you come back and say, yeah, God's telling me that too. Really? Am I talking to the bottom half of the picture or the top half of the picture? Right? And if you don't think this is true, that this happens in church in spiritual terms, what you saw in that Zoom call about is it real or is it appearance? Let me give you my favorite pastoral example, and I'm not pointing barbs at anybody, but this happens all the time. Hey, we have an opportunity. Would you like to serve on this team? And what's the first thing I get back? Yes. Let me pray about it. That's not the wrong answer. But you know, are you really praying about it? Are you the top half of the screen or the bottom half of the screen? Or are you going to wait an appropriate amount of time that seems spiritually appropriate to say, God said I should not do that, so now I can go back and tell Bill no. Right? Same thing with how we grow. Same thing with our time, our talent, our treasure. Same thing with if we decide to go forward in this building endeavor. Are we really seeking God's vision, or are we going through the motions until we feel like there's an appropriate amount of time to make the ask? I don't want to be that church. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to live shallow. I don't want to live disconnected from God's vision. So I'm begging you, church, jump in with both feet to this idea of growing together. Sign up for that day of fasting. Follow along with our prayer prompts on the 40 days of prayer. Genuinely seek God's vision. Be willing to lay aside whatever we have if he's got something better. Be willing to share that with other people in these vision gathering sessions. Don't hold it to yourself, but for God's sake, literally for God's sake. Don't just go through the motions. Don't just look for appearance. Don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me what God is telling you. You see the opportunity that we have right before us. God has always been there. God will always be there. But this time, in this place, is so unique. If you look at the statistics, depending on who you track, we've been the second fastest growing county in the United States. That means people are coming here. Maybe they've been disconnected from a church home. Well, I would love to help them find a church home. Maybe they've never heard of Jesus. See, the thing is, when people move from different areas of the country, we here in southern Texas tend to think that, well, everybody knows Jesus. That's not true. Have you gotten out and met some heathens here lately? As people move in, they may or may not have any relationship with Jesus. What an opportunity. But that's not an opportunity that's going to work from the outside in. That opportunity only works from the inside out. And it starts with transformed hearts. And transformed hearts start with prayer and fasting. Oh, he said the fasting word. This is going to be hard, and it is going to be hard. If you're used to having 3 squares a day and you've done that forever, if you're used to having a full pot of coffee every morning, this is going to be a wake-up call, no pun intended. Right? So let's just go to the setting where Jesus is talking about all this and walk through this a little bit. It's the Sermon on the Mount. He said many great things in this sermon. And as I said, if you read all of chapter 6, you're going to get the idea that he's talking about several things, not just fasting. But it's the important part is what he says about the appearance of it. He says this in Matthew 6:16. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head, wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father, who is unseen, and your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. These are the words of God for the people of God, and for these words we are grateful. Did you hear what he said right off the bat? This is one of those things you can rush right by, but don't rush by this one word that makes all the difference. When you fast. What's the word that makes a difference? Fast? No. When. Not if you fast. Jesus assumed that we were all going to fast. When you fast. Now, by show of hands, I know that some of you have never experienced that. That's not on you, because whose job is it to teach, organize, and equip you to do these things? Me. I have failed you. I'm not failing you anymore. I'm going to teach you how to do this. We're going to do this together. Have I done it before? Yes, I have. I have some absolutely amazing stories of what God has done. In fact, I wouldn't be standing here doing what I do today if it had not been for prayer and fasting. Buy me a cup of coffee sometime, not when you're fasting, and we'll talk about all those stories. It is absolutely amazing what can be revealed to you. So I say this from a heart that wants this for you, but I can't do this for you. All I can do is beg, borrow, and say, please, take this seriously. Live beyond the surface on this one. Experience God fully and watch what he can do. It is absolutely amazing. When you fast, do not disfigure your face. In other words, don't look like the top of that screen. Just be you. The only one that's watching, the only one that matters is God, who is unseen. The only one that matters is not what it looks like on the outside. The only thing that matters is what's happening on the inside. That's what we have to do with fasting. We have to make this a very private affair. Not that we're trying to be secretive about it, but we are trying to connect with the only one that matters. Again, it's what's on the inside, not what's on the outside. Now, Jesus didn't have this issue, but we do. We have this thing called social media. How many people have ever gotten that Instagram post from somebody, hey, look what I'm having for lunch today? Why did I need to know that? Oh, shop. My life has been transformed because I know what Joe had for lunch. This is amazing. That's probably not going to transform me, right? So the tendency could be, don't be this guy on the right. Look at me fasting. All right? Selfie. This is not what it's about. We're not doing this to prove that we're holier than someone else. We're not trying to do this to show that we're special in some way. What we're trying to do is connect to God. One of the best ways I can think to use an analogy that might ring with you is it's like a car, a classic car. You know, if you have an engine that's so old it is broken down and that car can't run, you could either spend your money fixing the engine, or you can spend your money fixing the outside, do the body so it looks really nice, looks great at car shows. Which one would you rather do? Depends on if you're a car guy. Me, I am immensely practical. Ask my wife. I don't really care what it looks like. I just care if it works, clearly. So I would rather fix that engine. But here's the thing. Many people are more concerned about what it looks on the outside. They'll spend all the time polishing, doing the body work, doing the paint job, getting all the parts just right so it looks perfect. The only problem is that car was never meant to sit. That car was meant to run. All show and no go. Amen, brother. I see a T-shirt in our future. Right? All show and no go is not what the Christian life is about. All go and no show, the Father who is in secret. Now there's the Christian life. That's going to be on the back of the T-shirt. Yeah. So if the car is made to run and the car cannot run, the car's not doing what it was built to do. You think if the car had a personality, that car would be fulfilled? No, you're not doing what you're meant to do. You think that car is going to feel any sense of purpose or meaning because it just sits there and looks good when it's made to run? No, folks, you are made to run. You're made to soar. You're made to make disciples. You're not made to sit and look pretty. I'm not worried about trying to build a building because it looks pretty. I'm trying to equip, organize, and train. I'm trying to create a base camp from which we reach out and impact lives. And it starts with us. That doesn't happen without that kind of prayer and fasting. If you look at many biblical examples, some of the mightiest acts of God happened around prayer and fasting. Some of the greatest failures on the parts of the disciples came because they did not fast with their prayer. There's a great story of some guys going out going, oh, we're going to cast out these spirits, and they get the tar beat out of them. And it's because they didn't do it right. They didn't attach the real connection to God. They tried to do it of their own accord. And we're not going to be like that. We're going to be more effective, more powerful. Now, the last thing that Jesus says there, and by the way, he says this in all three movements. You can go back and look at chapter 6. He says, I'm going to go to verse 1 for just a second because this encapsulates it all. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. He doesn't say don't do acts of righteousness. He doesn't say do works in front of people. He says don't do it for this motive so that you're seen by them. That's not the point. The point is we're doing this for God. If you do, you'll have no reward from your Father in heaven. I don't know about you, but when you compare worldly rewards with heavenly rewards, I don't think there's any real competition there. But the worldly rewards are like right there. They're easily accessible. They're bright. They're shiny. They catch the eye. But they don't last. and they don't fulfill. So again, back to our purpose. If you are built to run and we're not running, we're not going to be fulfilled. If you're wondering why I don't feel like I'm accomplishing things in this life, something's not right. I'm off center. It doesn't feel right. Maybe it's because we're not doing what we're built to do. And maybe if we fully embrace that, we would find a whole new sense of purpose. And you're saying, Bill, I don't have time to do any other thing. Maybe true. But you know, some things drain you. It's like, another thing to do, man, I don't have the energy for that. But did you know that some things will energize you? Some things, when you do them, actually give you energy, give you purpose, give you pep, zip in your step, the lifting of your soul. You know what those things are? The things that you're built to do. Do them. It doesn't take energy, it gives energy, it gives purpose, it gives meaning. All these things come together to lift us up. And if you haven't experienced that yet, I encourage you to keep looking. And if you're having trouble finding that thing, whatever it is that you're built to do that gives you that kind of energy, come and talk to me. I would love to get you plugged in a way that you can experience that. I know what mine are through a lot of trial and error. I have the benefit of a few more trips around the sun than some, and I have many, many failures. Well, you can call them failures. I call them lessons, which I learned, okay, that's not my thing. That's the thing that sucks the life out of me. But here's the thing that God built me for. And I try to camp out in there, and I try to find people that do the things that I'm not built for, so that together as a team, we can do everything and everybody gets lifted up. If you don't think that's possible, I don't know if we're thinking about God in big enough terms. Have you met God? He's huge. To quote a famous president, he's huge. Yeah. All right. Just checking if you're with me there. All right. So don't be this guy. Do the one who's seeking it in private. Now understand there are two levels at which this operates too. He says act normal in front of everybody else. That's true. That's as an individual. That's also as a church. It's one thing as an individual to say, okay, do you want me to serve on this team? Let me pray about it. I'm going to act like I'm praying so that I can tell you whatever I want to tell you later. It's another thing to say as a church, we're going to ask you to pray and seek God's guidance and vision to see if we really want to expand who we are, who our imprint is in this community, what this building thing might look like. But as a church, we're just doing this, going through the motions, so that we can later have a campaign where we ask for your money. Union Chappel's not going to do that. I'm being honest with you. That's why I'm telling you right now. We're going to pray. We're going to fast. We're going to see God's vision. And if that results in asking for time, talent, and treasure, we're going to do that too. We're going to be obedient to whatever we hear. And I think God's going to do some amazing things. At the very least, we're going to have an experience like maybe we've never had before. If you've had this before, guess what? You can have it again. If you've never had this before, buckle up. It's an amazing ride, and I don't want you to miss it. All right, so how do we do this, practically speaking? On the website, if you go to uniongmc.org, and then there's a / going together. It's also a tab on the main website. You're going to see Abide and Ask, which is conveniently split by our TV screen. So maybe over here. You can see all three of the things that I just talked about. Abide and Ask, God's Economy, and Have a Seat at the Table is the vision gathering sessions. And, by the way, there's more to come. There's also going to be a guide. This all launches on August 6th. That's going to be Thursday. We're going to have a link in the e-news that will take you here, and there's going to be an Abide and Ask guide. That guide is going to teach you everything you need to know about fasting in 12 pages or less. But if you have questions, obviously, let us know. We're going to have prayer prompts that will leak out during that prayer campaign. We're going to have opportunities for you to record what you're hearing and speak back to us so that we stay in constant contact as this develops. But that's the first place that you go. You go to this Abide and Ask. That's the first thing that we're doing, this 40 days of prayer. When you get there, you're going to see the key dates, again, conveniently split by the screen. That doesn't matter. There are the next few weeks, right? But here's what does matter. There's a download PDF. If you just can't wait to come Sunday and get a physical copy, if you act now, you can download the PDF, and you'll have it in your hands. And you can load it to your phone. Maybe set an alarm on your phone that reminds you, hey, go back and look at what it is for today. This is the way that this can work. Why would we bother with all of this stuff anyway? Because if you think about it, as we take in things and we get energized or not energized by them, what's fueling you? What's fueling your heart? What are you putting in your tank that keeps you going day to day? When you wake up in the morning, you go, hey, I got this to do today. Is that the Spirit's filling, or is that the world's filling? Is it the Spirit's guidance or the world's drivings? We're driven by things, by our culture. Can you guess which side of the pump is the spiritual side? I'm not biased at all, right? Yeah. Again, back to the car analogy, what are you putting in? What's fueling that engine? If you put the wrong fuel in the right engine, it's going to be the wrong engine pretty soon. But if you put the right fuel in the right engine, man, you can go 100 miles an hour. But not in full shirt, because the police are pretty tight, right? So what's fueling you? Jesus himself was one of the best examples of this. You think about what he had to go through as he came into prominence in his ministry. As behold, here's the Lamb of God. He gets baptized by John the Baptist. This wonderful voice of God says, this is my son in whom I am well pleased. This is the launch of his ministry. And what's the very first thing that he does? He goes into the desert and fasts for 40 days. Now, don't you think if you had a walk-on song like that and the hype man like John the Baptist, you would immediately jump in there because you're afraid he's losing the market share? Right? Hey, man, I'm popular now. I got to take advantage of this. These people are looking at me. I got to get the numbers. I got to get a building campaign together. I got to prayer team. No, he went and he fasted. Why? I think he echoed Israel's experience in that desert. The first taste of freedom ancient Israel had. They're released from Egypt. They wander for 40 years in the desert, totally dependent on God for what they had to eat. Jesus mirrors that. He doesn't go 40 years, he goes 40 days, totally dependent on what God had for him not to eat, because he himself says, man does not live by bread alone. Jesus is modeling, reminding them, hey, you tried this once. God had to put you through this process so that we could get you to the promised land. Jesus went through this process to bring the promised land to us through the cross, through the empty tomb. That's the power of fasting. Don't underestimate it. Once we understand that, we get what he says later when he says, I am the bread of life. You cannot live by bread alone. I am the bread. I am the fuel in your tank that gives you purpose and meaning, because I am the one who made you. I was there when you were fearfully and wonderfully made and knit in your mother's womb. I know your purpose. Why are you listening to some, quote, expert of the world to tell you what you're built for when I'm the one who made you? I am the bread of life. I am the fuel. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. See, once we make that connection through prayer and fasting and reliance on God and being open to hear what he has to say, then you're ready. You're hungry for more than just bread. And those who are hungry for more than just bread, that's exactly who Jesus feeds.